WADR, promoting dialogue.
Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. This is NEWSLINK. Here are the top stories. The Malian Transitional Authority accuses MINUSMA of violating UN Resolution 2690 as ex-rebels take control of bases. The Gambia's High Court hands ringleader of the December 2022 failed coup attempt a 12-year jail term for treason.
If you read the tenor of the Constitution on the provision relating to right to life and the application of the death penalty, this crime has not been accompanied by death, violence, or administration of toxic substance against anyone leading to death. So that does not apply. It's one of those peculiar cases where you cannot hand down the sentence of death.
Senegalese Electoral Commission urges Interior Ministry to restore Ousmane Sonko's name on the 2024 presidential electoral roll. And Nigeria's Federal Executive Council approves a $2.5 billion 2023 supplementary budget for critical sectors.
This supplementary budget is to fund urgent issues, including $605 billion for national defense and security.
Details of these stories and more coming up shortly. Stay tuned.
Here is Tawfiq Abdul Nasser with NEWSLINK.
Many thanks for joining us and a warm welcome to our listeners in the Gambia, Liberia and Ghana. Our top story takes us to the Sahel, where the United Nations peacekeeping mission in Mali, MINUSMA, completed its final withdrawal from Kidal in the northern region on Tuesday and the high tension. The convoy, made up of more than 100 vehicles escorted by Chadian and Guinean peacekeepers, had to overcome difficulties to reach Gao. In the wake of this early withdrawal, the rebels of the Permanent Strategic Framework claim to have taken control of the base that the UN mission left behind. In a press release, the Malian authorities denounced the violation of Resolution 2690 of the United Nations Security Council by MINUSMA for not handing over to the army. Abdullahi Hassan reports.
All the peacekeepers have left Kidal in the north of the country. According to MINUSMA, the last convoy, made up of more than 100 vehicles, was the target of two improvised explosive device attacks on its way, resulting in material damage. The UN mission nevertheless points out that its last flight from Kidal was able to reach Gao on Monday afternoon. MINUSMA held that the conditions for the departure of all its bases were extremely difficult due to the worsening security situation in the area. The ex-rebels under the Permanent Strategic Framework claimed to have taken control of the Kidal camp shortly after the last UN soldiers departed on Tuesday. In a press release, the Malian authorities denounced, and I quote, a betrayal by the MINUSMA. According to them, the mission violated Resolution 2690 of the United Nations Security Council. Bamako insists that the hasty departure of the peacekeepers is jeopardizing the process already underway and poses a major threat to the security and stability of the region. For its part, the army says that the withdrawal has not been handed over to the farmer as stipulated in the agreed timetable. The departure from Kidal marks the closure of the 8th MINUSMA base since the start of its withdrawal. The UN mission has until the end of the year to finally evacuate from Mali.
Abdullahi Hassan reporting there. Now, Chad's military government and the major opposition leader, Success Masra, reached an agreement on Tuesday for his return after a year of forced exile following a violent protest, as announced by Congolese mediation in Kinshasa. The agreement in principle was signed in Kinshasa between the transitional government and the political party La Transformation, with the aim to facilitate the return of its president, Success Masra, to charge. President Felix Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of Congo, acting as the facilitator of the Economic Community of Central African State, ECAS, for the transition process in Chad, disclosed this development in a press release. We stay longer in the Sahel because Burkina Faso on Tuesday commemorated the 9th anniversary of the popular uprising. A wreath-laying ceremony was held at the Place du Martyrs in Ouagadougou, the nation's capital, to pay tribute to the 33 people who died in the rebellion. 9 years on, the legal case has still not been resolved. Francis Boniface has more in this report by WADR's Ouagadougou correspondent Martin Kaba.
On the 9th anniversary of the popular uprising, a wreath of flowers was laid to pay tribute to the 33 people killed by bullets from the Presidential Security Regiment. 9 years on, the question of how to take care of the beneficiaries is still being raised. Victor Paulabou is the president of the Association of Victims of the Popular Insurrection.
The presence of the victims, I can say that there have already been laws that have been passed, that have been voted, and I think that after these laws, Traore will work on them. We are already working on it. We hope that soon things will go back to normal. The laws for the people, the nation, which put the FDF and the families of the victims in charge.
This 9th anniversary was held against a backdrop of the security crisis. Some of the 600 wounded Burkinabe soldiers were present at the memorial ceremony. Among them was Sibiri Joani Ouedraogo, who hopes that peace will return to Burkina Faso.
We're in a regime of exceptions, and in the matter of exceptions, freedoms are not plural. We accept some deprivation of freedoms because we are at war. But after the war, we'll spread our struggles. But at least we are fighting to save our country. We are fighting to restore the republic.
Nearly a decade after, the legal case has still not been resolved. This case involves the 34 members of the Blaise Compaore's government, prosecuted for their alleged involvement in the repression of the popular uprising of 30 and 31 October 2014.
A report by WADR's Martin Kaba and voiced in our studios by Francis Boniface. Let's exit the Sahel with an update in Niger as the Front for the Restoration of Dignity and the Nation is declaring war on economic criminals. The front plans to organize a march followed by a meeting on Sunday, November 5, to demand that the ruling military clean up this act and put Niger back on the right footing. Ogeobi Erika has more details.
After being heavily involved in the fight for the departure of French troops, the Civil Society Front for the Restoration of the Nation's Dignity is calling on the court to prosecute former President Issoufou Mahamadou and others suspected of economic crimes. The leaders of the front plan to organize a march followed by a meeting to make their demands better known. For Gamache Mahamadou Yansambo, president of the Front for the Restoration of the Dignity of the Nation, cleaning up public finances will increase confidence between the people and the CNSP and make it easier to replenish state coffers. The front intends to rally the people of Niamey to its cause by inviting them to join the march on the streets.
Ogeobi Erika found that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. NewsLink continues.
Now, the ringleader of the December 2022 failed coup attempt in the Gambia was served a 12-year jail term by the High Court for treason. The High Court also acquitted and discharged 3 others for treason and concealment. The court made the ruling yesterday, Tuesday, following 10 months of trial. WADR's Sankule Janko has more in this report.
Sanafadera, the ringleader of the failed coup, was served a 12-year jail term and he was found guilty of treason. Delivering his judgment, Justice Mahoney said the evidence presented by the prosecutor proved that Sanafadera had prepared and attempted to overthrow the democratically elected government of President Adama Barrow through unlawful means. Reacting to the ruling, Defense Counsel Lamin S. Kamara says he will appeal the judgment.
Even though I am aggrieved and we are aggrieved, I'm going to appeal against it, but I respect it. My client has given me instruction to appeal against the judgment, and we'll definitely appeal it because we respectfully disagree with the judgment.
Although treason is punishable by death according to the Gambian law, the Defense Counsel appealed to the court on behalf of Sanafadera, requesting a lesser penalty because of the factors surrounding the case.
If you read the tenor of the Constitution on the provision relating to right to life and the application of the death penalty, this crime has not been accompanied by death, violence, or administration of toxic substance against anyone leading to death. So that does not apply. It's one of those peculiar cases where you cannot hand down the sentence of death.
The second, third, and fifth accused persons were acquitted and granted bail on the set conditions. The individuals were slapped with $100,000 or its equivalent of about $1,500 each and one Gambian surety. Recall Jibril Dabo, Ibrahim Asano, and Fabakari Jawara were arrested in January and charged with treason for attempting to overthrow the Barrow government before their acquittal and discharge. The State Counsel, A.M. Yusuf, says he will appeal the ruling, arguing that treason is a capital crime and a severe sentence is needed to serve as deterrent against schools. For NEWSLINK on West African Democracy Radio, I'm Sankula Jenko reporting from Banjul.
In Senegal, the Electoral Commission has asked the Ministry of the Interior to reinstate opposition politician Ousmane Sonko's name on the electoral roll. The letter from the electoral body stresses that the mayor of Ziguinchor must be able to obtain the documents he needs to stand as a candidate in the 2024 presidential election. Imoradet tells us more.
In this letter, Sena asserts that Ousmane Sonko must enjoy status as a registered voter with all the rights attached thereto. The mayor of Ziguinchor is currently struck off the electoral roll and is unable to compete in the presidential election. The Senegalese government attributes this removal to the fact that he was sentenced in absentia in the Adjusar case. Since the end of July, the president of the former PASTEF party has been in prison on other charges. On the 12th of October, a judge in Ziguinchor in southern Senegal ordered that Ousmane Sonko be reinstated on the electoral roll. This decision was rejected by the Ministry of the Interior, which refused to issue him the forms that would enable him to collect the sponsorships that were essential to his candidacy. The opponent's lawyers had asked the electoral body to mediate following the refusal of the Directorate General of Elections, DGE, to issue the sponsorship forms. Responding late Tuesday, the DGE stated that it was not competent to take any action on the electoral register, adding that its position was based on the order of the First Administrative Chamber of the Supreme Court. While the Autonomous National Electoral Commission is responsible for monitoring and supervising the electoral process, the Ministry of the Interior is responsible for organizing the elections. On Tuesday, Ousmane Sonko's lawyers challenged the refusal to issue him with sponsorship forms. The ECOWAS Court of Justice is expected to rule on the matter on November 6.
Imoradet with that report. President Bola Tinubu of Nigeria has assured foreign ambassadors in the country of his administration's commitment to maintaining open lines of communication and cooperation. In separate meetings with ambassadors from Angola, Belgium, Norway and Venezuela, the president emphasized the importance of strong diplomatic relations and expressed his willingness to engage with the foreign missions. WADR's Usman Omar in Abuja completes the story.
The Nigerian leader assured the ambassadors that the Foreign Ministry and its Chief of Staff's office would always be available to address any concerns they may have. President Tinubu also discussed specific areas of cooperation with each ambassador. He congratulated President João Lourenço of Angola on his re-election, acknowledged the participation of Belgian companies in Nigeria's maritime industry, articulated his energy transition vision to Norwegian ambassador, and called for support for Norway and other EU member countries in Nigeria's economic reform programs. The ambassadors expressed gratitude for Nigeria's role in their respective countries and expressed their commitment to building sustainable partnerships with Nigeria. Peter Lingnecht is Belgium's ambassador to Nigeria.
Our priorities will be built on what we already done, build on a good business-to-business relationship between our two countries, and to build a partnership with Nigeria on many on our priorities. And a lot of what we will prioritize around the world is also replicated here. So we need to engage Nigerian government to learn from their experience, from their priorities, and from what's going on in this region of the world.
The ambassadors all presented letters of credence from their respective countries to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. For NewsLink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Meanwhile, Nigeria's Federal Executive Council has approved a 2023 supplementary budget of 2.1 trillion naira or $2.5 billion. Speaking after the FEC meeting in Abuja, the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Atiku Bagudu, said the budget is to fund urgent issues. According to him, there will be allocations to maintain previous progress on national security and agriculture, as well as months of wage awards for federal government workers and student loans funds.
The Council considered a request for supplementary appropriation, which is the second for 2023. And this supplementary budget is to fund urgent issues, including 605 billion for national defense and security before the year runs out. Equally, a sum of 300 billion was provided to repair bridges, including Eko and mainland bridges, as well as construction, rehabilitation of maintenance of many roads nationwide before the return of the rainy season. Equally, the sum of 200 billion was provision for seed, agricultural input, supplies, and agricultural implements and infrastructure in order to support expansion of food production. The sum of 210 billion is provided for the payment of wage awards. In negotiation with the Nigeria Labour Congress, the federal government agreed to pay 35,000 naira each to about 1.5 million employees, the federal government, and that amounts for September, October, November, and December 2023.
Nigeria's Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Atiku Bagudu, speaking there. You're listening to NewsLink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM, Dakar. Here is a reminder of our top stories. The Malian Transitional Authority accuses MINUSMA of violating UN Resolution 2690 as ex-rebels take control of bases. The Gambia's High Court hands ringleader of the December 2022 failed coup attempt a 12-year jail term for treason. Senegalese Electoral Commission urges Interior Ministry to restore Ousmane Sonko's name on the 2024 presidential electoral roll, and Nigeria's Federal Executive Council approves a $2.5 billion 2023 supplementary budget for critical sectors. Still ahead is the press review, the guest interview, and sports update. Stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Now, Ghana's Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagbin, has announced a legislative inquiry into the spillage of the Akosombo Dam by the Wadr River Authority. Weeks after the spillage hit the country's eastern region, thousands of people remain displaced and deprived of essential services despite the government's response. James Ejapon reports.
Thousands of residents in parts of the Volta and eastern regions have been displaced, and several properties have been destroyed by the spillage of excess water from the dam. Speaking in Parliament on Tuesday, Ghana's Speaker of Parliament, Bagbin, said it was unacceptable for the Volta River Authority to have carried out the spillage without a well-thought-through security and safety preparedness plan. In line with these concerns, Parliament would take the necessary action to inquire into the matter and make recommendations for the protection of property and lives living along the Volta River and Lake and other settlements along river beds. This is a national assignment, and Parliament should be seen to be leading in finding solutions to this perennial problem confronting the nation, he said. Bagbin also urged all members of parliament to rally behind their colleagues whose constituencies had been affected by the spillage. Nearly 40,000 people, according to the National Disaster Management Organization, NADMO, are currently displaced due to the artificially induced flood.
James Ejapon reporting there.
This is the newspaper review. Stay on top of the news. Get the most important stories with added insight and concise review.
This is the newspaper review.
Sankule Janko Mbandu joins us now with the major headlines from the Gambian dailies.
Let's begin this press review with the Point newspaper. Ringleader in coup trial sentenced to 12 years. That's, of course, Senator Wadr. The judgment was delivered by Justice Mahoney on Tuesday after 10 months of trial involving Senator Wadr and 3 others who were accused of attempting to overthrow the Barrow-led government. Barrow completes 2026 presidential candidacy. That's another story on the Point newspaper. GRA boss extols Barrow's non-interference in revenue administration. Now, let's move on to the Standard newspaper. Court set to deliver judgment on Bora's 7 million suit against IGP. CJ Dabo says Gambia's stable political environment provides hope. Now, let's move on to the Voice newspaper. GRA determined to continue facilitating payment of taxes. That's according to Commissioner General Dabo. Gambia government and partners present plans and actions for a responsive, accountable transition project. Now let's move on to the final paper for today, and that is the foreign newspaper. ECOWAS court dismisses case of Jammeh ordering killing a Nigerian. ECOWAS court adjourns case of alleged disappearance of Ghanaians in Gambia. Of course, recall in 2005, over 56 West Africans were arrested along the Gambian shores, and eventually they were all killed, and that's according to the testimonies of witnesses during the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission of the Gambia. And finally, drivers' demand for car parks in KM, that is Kanifing municipality. It's one of the biggest regions in the country, but unfortunately, the region has very limited car parks, and drivers are demanding that authorities provide car parks for them. I'm afraid these are the major stories making headlines on Gambian dailies, and it's back to you in the studio.
Sankule Janko there with the major headlines from the Gambian dailies.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
This afternoon's guest segment brings us back to Mali, where the United Nations peacekeeping mission, MINUSMA, concluded its final withdrawal from Kidal in the northern region amidst heightened tension. The Malian authorities, in a press release, have criticized MINUSMA for failing to hand over control to the army, citing a breach of United Nations Security Council Resolution 2690. As concerns arise about the potential security ramifications following the recent withdrawal from Kidal and the subsequent occupation of the base by the rebels of the Permanent Strategic Framework, our guest, Morgan Asogba, a regional security expert, offers his insights on the challenges and risk that this development poses for the region.
Well, this is the step that will put everything back on the ground and clarify what is the next move in Mali, be it from the side of the rebels or from the side of the government, because MINUSMA moving, it's creating effectively the vacuum that should be occupied either by the government or by the rebels. And depending on who occupies that vacuum, the future of Mali in terms of country size and leadership will be determined.
Right. So in light of the rebels of the Permanent Strategic Framework claiming control of the UN base in Kidal, what are the immediate security threats posed to the local population and neighboring regions? Is there any?
One thing is sure is that if they definitely take control effectively of Kidal, the population that was already moving out because of the fear that was being created will be subjected, and that is for those who will still be around, to the ruling of these rebels. And when we talk about rulings of the rebels, you can see the religious way of moving, and which is not always what people aspire to have, especially in Mali. Aside that, you will have contingency on every single economic and feeding process, because the market will become a challenge, and the economy will be controlled by the rebels that will not have always the same democratic or social way of ruling things.
Right. So, considering the Malian authorities' response to the withdrawal, what are the potential diplomatic and security implications of this situation for the UN's future peacekeeping operations in the country and similar conflict-prone regions?
The implications are numerous. The first thing is that it is clear that the UN is kind of stepping out of the country, and the leadership implication will now be jeopardized in terms of effectiveness on the ground. So there might be a call for diplomatic negotiation, but those diplomatic negotiations will not be conducted by the UN authorities, because to be able to serve as a mediation body, it is important to meet some kind of credibility from the parties that are into a conflictual situation. And right here, it is clear that the Malian authorities do not trust that much the UN anymore. As far as the rebels are concerned, this is a different perspective. So there will be a need of finding a different third party that could serve as mediation, that could bring all the parties to the negotiation table.
Morgan Asogba is a regional security expert. And in sports, Saudi Arabia has been officially designated as the host of the 2034 FIFA World Cup as the sole bidder for the tournament, confirmed by the governing body. Earlier this month, FIFA stated that only bids from Asia and Oceania would be considered for the 2034 event, in line with the continental rotation principle for hosting the tournament. This decision follows an agreement between Spain, Portugal and Morocco to jointly host the 2030 World Cup, while Argentina, Paraguay and Uruguay will each hold one match as part of the agreement. And that's it for sports. We have come to the end of this edition of NewsLink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Christian Mukidi and Mustafa Sek for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram at WADL News on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. I am Taufik Abdul Nasir. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to NewsLink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0, and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County. For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.